So welcome to the fifth week of how to build your course in Canvas. And this topic today is create modules and structure. And really, it's a foundational concept that really you control the path that students take through your course. So I'm going to get started with lots of good details here. So I'm sharing my screen. On the left, I have the asynchronous resource that I've kind of built to go along with all of this information for those who maybe can't join us, or if you're looking to go back and review. So weeks 1 through 4 are up and available. They have all of the Friday recordings. On Fridays, I take that last one and I put it in there. And then this one for this week is going to have it's going to look a little sparse because really this concept, although critical, it's actually pretty straightforward. So we'll go ahead and get started with talking about how to customize your course navigation menu. I had touched on this topic back in the first introductory week, and I like to revisit it more specifically because as you get to building your course and work towards completing out your content, sometimes you realize that there's access you want to give students in this course menu. And that's going to get controlled in your settings. So it's fairly limited, where in Blackboard, you could really customize, you could call, really you could just name stuff and put all sorts of things in that course menu. Canvas keeps it simple. They give you the option in this third tab at the top of the page called navigation. And you basically have two buckets, bucket that students can see and a bucket students can't see. And the top one is the one that all my students can see. This is going to be pretty messy and overwhelming in the sandboxes, but as you move into academic course shells, you're going to see it's very streamlined. So that's just a process in learning the system administration of a new product. We started off with a bunch, and now we're whittling away, and you'll really only have active those bare minimum, what you probably are going to use most often. And then all the rest of it will be at the bottom, and you can choose to add or take away. So right now, all I have to do is take them and drop them into the bottom bucket. This is how I get rid of my students seeing all this extra stuff. And I get to control exactly what they have access to. So you can see I'm getting rid of most everything. I'm going to move my syllabus right underneath home because that's really important, something they visit usually first. I'm going to move my modules up underneath my announcements. I'm going to take away outcomes. I'm not going to show them rubrics. I'm going to leave quizzes, and maybe I get rid of pages. So you get to choose all of this. Now, one of the most common questions I have is, well, what if I want to add a link to something else that's not a choice here? You have an option to do that. It's a little more advanced, but not much. You're basically going to do two steps. You're going to open up whatever place you want to put a link to. So today, for example, I had someone ask, how do I get a link to the School of Pharmacy website? So first I would have to go to find that website. So if I go to UIW Home and I search for pharmacy, it's probably going to come up. And if I was on a different computer, I probably already had a bookmark. But I find that link and then I copy it. Just copy the URL, web address, and go back into your course and select apps. So in apps, I have not installed and installed. I obviously want to click the ones that are already there, so installed. And then I look for this blue arrow, and that's called the redirect tool. And this redirect tool, when you click on it, you're going to have a red button to add the app. And you're going to want to choose that. And you're going to want to name whatever words you want to see over here in this course menu. That's what the name is. So I'm going to call this the FSOP website. and I'm going to paste that URL right here. And then I'm going to click Show in Course Navigation. So that's the selection that you want to make sure you keep. And then you're going to say Add App. And then once I refresh the page, you'll see that that is now in my list of options. So if I go over to navigation, you'll also see it here. And now it's going to function just like any of these others, and I can hide it or I can put it back. And I have control that way. So that is one, little trick. I do like to caution you. If you are wanting to create a link to something in your course using that redirect tool, keep in mind that next term, when you copy the course over, that link will no longer be valid because it's pointing to a course that those new students don't have access to. So that is a manual process that you need to be able to go in and take that out and be willing to redo it every term with each fresh course if you choose to make it work that way. If it's to an external website, as long as that website's still active and available, then you don't have any problems. So I'm gonna click save. I didn't really make any changes, but it's just sort of a built-in safety net. I always click save just in case. And I'm gonna jump back to my home, which is going to land on my modules page because I'm working in a sandbox demo. And I'll pause here. Does anybody have any questions about the course navigation menu? Okay, so the next thing we'll move on to talking about. So that's your first level, that's the basic control you have for creating the structure of your course, is that course navigation menu, and it's really straightforward. The second piece you have is modules. Now, one of the best things to think about is that when you create quizzes or you create pages, those areas are going to be alphabetical order or order of due date, right? So they have like a built-in default structure. Your modules, though, that's totally up to you. You get to put everything in the order that you want it. You can really just customize the hierarchy and the way your course is going to be connected across the board. So the best way to think about the modules is they are empty buckets, and you can put whatever you want inside of them. Once you put stuff inside of them, you can go so far as to indent to create a hierarchy. So if you've got, say, the welcome, and then you want your syllabus indented because that's part of your welcome, you really get to control what that looks like for your students. The next piece to think about is it connects everything in sequence. So the way it does that, I'm going to decrease the indent just to kind of keep this the way it was, but I'm going to click on the very first welcome, and it's going to take me to this page. And at the bottom, you're going to notice there's a next button. That button was created because this item is put into a module. So when I click next, the very next thing in the list of modules is what comes next. And this is how you are basically going to have created all the connections between each of the individual items by putting them in the buckets. So I really can next and previous through the entire course. I don't have to build that feature. I don't have to create links on my page to allow people to get other places. I just put the item into a module, and it will take them next, next, next down the entire page, as long as it is published for them to be able to see it. If it's not published, it's going to skip it. So let's say you're co-teaching, and in between your exam materials pages, you wanted to put some instructor notes to each other. And maybe that's a page where you talk about what happened in class on Tuesday, and you just sort of keep a running record. You can do that and leave it unpublished, and basically only the teachers, TAs, and colleague roles would see that item. students would have no idea it even existed.
Melissa, how do you make it unpublished?
This green check mark throughout
Okay.
everywhere. So you're going to see in files, you have the option, in items, everywhere, everything you do, you can create it. And then it's going to say, do you want to publish it or not? And the green check means it's published. So I can say, I don't want it published anymore. And that's what a file will look like. So see how it pops this up. It's a little bit different. So that's one feature. And then pages, you just turn them on and off right here. It doesn't give you multiple options.
So the pages you can't, it's an on or off. It's the modules that you can change the availability date.
Correct. So files, you can change availability dates. So everything that you put in your file structure, Word documents, PDFs that are uploaded. And then you also get to control date release on the pages by controlling the whole bucket. So that's the next thing we'll talk about, is editing an entire module's features. We basically are always in Canvas, everywhere we go, going to look for those 3-dot menus that gives us our more options. And when you click that, you're going to have edit as the very first one. Now, these 3 dots control the entire module. And then you've also got 3 dots to control the individual items. So keep in mind there's levels. When we edit an entire module, we're going to get basically 3 big choices. You're going to get the option to lock until a date and time. This will effectively, every single thing inside of this module will be locked until this opens up, as long as you haven't given another access point. So for example, if I put a file into a module and I lock the module, but I give everyone access to my files and the individual file is not locked, that's a secondary way that they could access that information. So you kind of have to think about, what's the cause and effect here, and how am I giving students access to information? So if I have a page and I put a link to an assignment and I lock the page access because the module, it's in the module and I don't give them access, but they can go straight to the assignments and the assignment's not locked, they have a backdoor to be able to get to that. So the big picture and what you do with all of the individual choices matters. So you can choose a date, you can choose a time, and then the items within that module would not be available. If that's what you plan to do for your students, I mean, this is not so much for health professions, but I would say like freshman level courses where you've got very new learners who you really want to keep them on track, you would take away all their extra links. They would only be in their modules. That's the only way that they would get to this information. And then you could lock that down so that they have to do one thing at a given period of time. 2 other ways that you get to control this information, other than the date and time, is through requirements and prerequisites. So requirements are going to be what you expect students to do with the information inside of a module. Prerequisites are going to be, what do you want them to do before they get to that module? So you'll see this first module doesn't have any prereqs. That's because it is logistically first. There's no way to give a prereq because there's nothing that comes before it. So if I cancel this one and I go to my second one and I click edit here, now I have the option for a prerequisite. And I can say, and it only gives me the option of what comes before this module. So I can say students have to go through the introduction before they can start module 1. And until they have literally opened and done everything that's expected in the first introduction, they won't be able to access the second one. So you control that. I can also click the X to take it away if I've changed my mind. If you've got several options, you do get the option to do, something more complex. Like let's say they have to do the intro and another option. You just have to put that module first before it. The requirements is again going to be what is inside the module. I am going to require them to complete everything. Or if you want, they have to do it in the order that you've placed it. So if you've got pre-work that you want done before they come to lab, you can really control the order that they access that information. And then if you click the other options, these are your two main options, you can say they have to do one or more. So basically, you don't have to do all or none. You can set up the variables to whatever level of detail you need. And then of course you can always take it away and add multiples. When you're finished setting up these choices, make sure you click update module because that's how you save. And then it will apply to your course. So one thing to keep in mind, we were talking about publishing. All of my items in this module are unpublished because I have not finished working on them. I like to keep things turned off until I'm done. One shortcut, I can turn each one on individually, or I can come up here and I can click the whole thing and it will turn everything on for me. So it's just a little shortcut for you. If I turn it off, it does not turn all of them off for me. So it does work effectively one way, but does not reverse the same. Okay, any questions about module lock days, prereqs, or requirements?
Can you just repeat what you said just now again about it works one way and not the other? Like which way does it work and which way doesn't it work? Sorry.
Okay, if you're watching where my cursor is right here, I'm going to
Yeah.
click this button.
Yes.
See how it just turned everything on?
Okay.
Now watch when I turn it off.
Okay.
It does not work.
It's still on. Okay.
They are all
Okay.
still on. So I have to turning them off. It makes you do more work than turning it all on. So
Okay.
just makes it a little easier.
Going back to your original statement about being sure that there's not a back doorway, like if you had an assignment that also had that, that, I mean, I'm used to just turning the module or sort of the module off and then they can't access that, but then not having to turn them all back on. So that's actually, as long as I've got them turned off like you currently have, they can't backdoor it.
So in this particular case, I started with settings and controlling your navigation menu because that's really going to be most of the backdoors. So these are turned off, but they're all pages. And I have right here pages hidden. So I've closed the back door. But if pages was visible, they could get to all of these pages if they were turned on. So it's really, this is on, but this is not. That's that crack, the little crack on how they can get through. If I turn them off per item, they cannot, even if they had the course navigation link.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
If I have a link to an assignment in my pages, how does that control work? So if I have it turned on in assignments, but it's not turned off in module, they can still go to assignments too, if they can see the assignments.
So if I go right here and add an assignment, so I'm just going to add, one randomly and put it right here. And I unpublish that assignment.
Yes.
So at this point, it's going to be unpublished inside both places.
Yes. Oh, good.
Yes. So if you control the publishing of a particular item, you have no problems. If you just want to leave just the module unpublished and you were to turn on the individual items, that's where you open those back doors.
Okay. I had another question, sorry. So in the modules at the very top, if you click on the three dots, you can change the availability date, but the level below, if I click to, is that a page? Yeah. If you click on one of those three dots and you click edit.
It's going to give you this preview just to change the name.
Okay.
That's if you wanted to update the name of your page. Like, let's say, for example, I really do actually want to update the name of this page. I don't want to call it the revised last year's date. And let's say I'm going to get rid of this part right there. I say update. I just changed the name of that page from this spot. And then if I actually want to edit the page, I can open up the page to get to that level of editing what's actually here. So that's that edit button. Lots of layers.
Okay. So I think maybe that may answer my next question, because sorry, I've got so many. So because my
That's okay.
question in Blackboard, usually if I have modules, I can set the availability date for everything under that module. So I can just click on the page, and if I was to edit it, and then how do I set the availability date for everything underneath?
So
if I don't want to open.
If you don't want the students to be able to get to anything else and you want to just control the dates of each module, the best thing you can do is go to settings, wait for it to load, come to your navigation tab, get rid of all the options for them to go to stuff directly. So I'm going to have my home, my syllabus, my announcements, and my modules. That's it. I'm going to take everything else away. I'm going to click save. And then I can go back to my modules. I'm going to publish this one, but I'm going to say I'm going to leave this one off. I'm going to edit this one. I'm going to say lock it until, let's say today's the 27th. Let's say we'll lock it till tomorrow. It's not going to open until tomorrow. I'm going to say update. So this is going to show you locked until April 28th. This one I'm going to show you is unpublished. Now I go to my student view. And with what I just did, I took away all the links for them to get anywhere. They can't get to my pages. They can't get to my assignments. They can't get to my quizzes. I've got this first module has everything available to them. They can go everywhere they need to go. This one is going to tell them, nope, this one's locked until the 28th. And then you'll see that third one isn't there at all because it wasn't published. It's pretending like it doesn't exist for the students.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on what you want their experience to be like, you've got lots of options for controlling that. I don't recommend the concept of keeping things unpublished because of that whole magic disappearing, reappearing thing. It's very disorienting to your students. It's definitely better to have it showing and lock it until a certain date, just so they can anticipate what's coming up. And it doesn't just go from nothing on the page to 10 more things to do. That can be a little stress inducing. So so I just clicked this button right here, and I'm going to go back to my student view, and that's going to make that pop up on the page. And it's open to them to be able to see it because I did not put a lock date.
Okay, I'll ask one more question and then I'll shut up.
Oh no, you're fine.
Yeah, I'm
Questions are
thinking
great.
about how I do Blackboard, and so it looks like at this one I can only my concern, because I will set up my module and I'll put availability dates for everything under that module. Because if I just unpublish it, I may forget to go back and publish it for the students.
Okay.
So does that mean that if I want to just selectively maybe set up, because I have modules and then I have weeks and then the weeks have days, and I usually open the weeks up all at once, 1 week at a time. So does that mean that if I just want to open up, say, just the weeks, I'll have to make each week a different module then, because that's how, and set an availability date without having to go back like every week to remember to turn it on?
Exactly.
When I'm building the course.
Yes, you would want to go by week that way. So really what we're talking about is that you don't have the ability to control date and time release for a page.
Okay.
That's the only thing. You can do that individually for everything else. Discussions, assignments, quizzes, total control. You just don't have the ability to lock a page.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's important to know.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And questions are great. Like nobody hesitate. I tell you, the best sessions that I have is because somebody asks a question that I go, oh yes, because I didn't think of it that way. Okay, so lots of ability to control, lots of layers of which you get to manipulate how your course behaves. I will say that you can rearrange things that are in your modules by dragging and dropping. You also have the more options in the ... menus to move, and this will open up a little sidebar that you can tell it where to go if you're having trouble with dragging and dropping. So sometimes, depending on your browser, if you're working on a small screen, sometimes it can be challenging. That is a secondary way that you can rearrange. So you can tell it which module you want it to go in, and then what specific order of where you want it to be placed, and it will move for you. You also have the options to remove information. So you can remove this particular file, but that file will still exist in your files area. So you're not deleting it when it says remove. You can also remove pages. They will still exist in your index of pages. So if you're really wanting to delete it, you need to open the page and actually delete the page, not remove it from the module. So really, it's just these empty buckets you filled up with stuff, and then you can also take them back out. You can copy to any other course that you're enrolled in. So if you've got information you want to share with colleagues, they can enroll you in their course as a colleague. A colleague role at UIW is someone who can have access to the course and see everything and edit information. So be able to copy and download and take things, but they don't have access to grading. So that's really nice to know if you're co-teaching and one of you is responsible for grades, but not the other, and you're not coming in through Banner. So if you're instructor of record in any way, this would not apply because Banner controls that. But anything on the side, you're working together, that colleague role, you can add your person and then they won't be notified of all the work for grading. Let me think, what else? We can collapse all very easily while you're building your course. That can be a very convenient button, expand all, and then you can also individually do this as well. You can rearrange all of your modules with dragging and dropping, and you can also move the entire module with the same slide out menu that I just shown. Lots of choices. If there aren't any more questions about modules, and I'm happy to talk about them as much as you need me to. The third piece of today's session is called mastery paths. And so we kind of talked about you have ways to control where they access info in your course menu. We talked about the modules being buckets that you can lock by date. You can have prerequisites and you can make requirements. So that's controlling their behaviors and their access. But mastery paths is how you release content based on how well your students perform on graded materials. So before we move into that, are there any additional questions on modules?
So, sorry.
You're good.
I'm going back to those availability dates again.
Mm-hmm.
I can't set ones on pages, but I can set it on modules.
Mm-hmm.
Can I set it on assignments?
Yes.
I can. Okay, so if I was to build a module and I have my assignment set up, but I don't want it open it yet, can I control it up in the assignments and it'll just show up under the module?
Yes. So all of the interconnectivity between the features in Canvas happens for you. No matter where you're building it, it's going to update throughout the other places. So you never have to worry about that. This is an assignment. So all of these icons mean something, right? The little page, the little pencil or pen, whatever that is, that's an assignment. So I can come over here and click edit. And again, just like a page, it's only going to let me do so much in this space. But if I click the actual title, it'll open up the full editing. And then of course, this is where all the graded features, when you scroll to the bottom, you have this ability to control when they open, when they close, and when they're due.
Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Did you, when you showed all those pages now, I guess I actually didn't understand those little icons before, but when you showed those pages, did you insert those pages, or did that happen automatically as you had items that you loaded that were really files? Yeah, so does it create a new page when you load files, or do I need to load a file in order? Does that make sense? My question, I guess.
Okay, so just to give a quick overview of this, files is going to be stuff you upload, and when you upload it, it just goes into files. It's not going to create anything else anywhere else automatically.
So I have to create a page to put it in?
Yes, so a page is, you have total creative freedom to create pages of content. So are you familiar with SoftChalk?
I don't use that.
Okay, so a lot of people do use SoftChalk because they want to create pages of content information about what they're teaching. Canvas comes with that feature built in, and that's called a page. So when you create a page, you can put anything you want on it. You can put multiple file links, you can put videos, you can type words. It's basically content authoring for your subject matter built into the learning management system. You don't have to use it, but it is one tool to help you organize information for your students and be able to type a narrative so that they get some context with your content. So instead of just having a link to a PowerPoint, you can have the ability to say, you know, I want everyone to make a list of questions as you look at this PowerPoint. You know, you get just that extra level of communication.
Well, that's just like we would do if we had an item in Blackboard. I mean,
Yes.
So we're loading items and then we write a message. So the page is sort of fulfilling that kind of, okay.
Correct. So similar, but different. Okay, so definitely in your modules, you can add everything that you can create in Canvas. So this plus button is going to give you all the choices. You can add assignments or create a new one. So if you haven't been over into assignments to create your assignments, you can do that from right here. But just keep in mind, it will automatically be in assignments, even though you're working on it from this location. That applies to everything. Quizzes has the same feature. Files, you can upload a new one from your computer right here, or you can choose one you've already gone to files to upload. You can choose the pages or create a new one. You can choose a discussion or create a new one, etc. When you get to these last three choices, you've got a little bit different. You've got text headers, which basically lets you, for example, in the PT courses, their assignments that they have in their modules. Oops, I had my caps lock on. What a rookie mistake. Assignments. So they put a text header. They say add the item. And then in each module, they've got pages, and then they have their assignments indented at the bottom so that students know these are the links where you're going to go turn stuff in and actually get a grade versus content you're just consuming on my pages. Then you had two more choices. You had external URL, which is how you can create a link to any page. I highly recommend always selecting to load in a new tab. If it's a page that they need to, actually do some work on, it can be a little constraining when it loads inside the Canvas window. And if you have it load in a new tab, you can just ensure that that website performs a little bit better. It's really a matter of appearance though versus a requirement. If you like it the other way, it's probably not going to make a difference. But if students reported that there was a concern, loading it in a new tab usually fixes it. And then this last one, you've got all those external tools that we talked about in the session on the rich content editor. So when you open up the rich content editor, you had the plugin that looks like the electric cord, and you could select from options there. And I showed how to find a YouTube video. You can do the same in this space. So I can come in, I can search YouTube video for, something fun, and I can click embed, and it will actually just add the URL to this module. And then of course I can always delete it. Okay, does that clear up? You have a lot of options with this. I'll talk a little bit about mastery paths. So I'm going to remove this header that I made, and I'm going to decrease the indent. So let's say, for example, I'm going to create a page, and the page is going to be called, it's a new page, and I'm going to call it extension activity. Okay, and I'm going to spell it correctly. So it's an extension activity. I'm going to add the item, and on this extension activity page, I'm going to come in and, for example, imagine I edit the page and maybe I put a few scenarios, some summary information, and a 3-question quiz. I put a link to that. And so I've got all that information here on my page, and I save and I publish it. And I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute. I want to make this a mastery paths, that students who fail an activity need to come to this extension piece and be remediated in what I've got going on here. So I come back in and I edit, and I say, I want to allow in mastery paths. And this is only for pages that you have to do this piece, because pages don't give a grade. They're not included in mastery paths by default. You actually have to check this box. The same way that you have to check the box if you want to add it to the students to do with a date and time. It doesn't lock it, but it will put it on their list. I like this feature. If you give lab work that you want done before lab, and let's say lab's on Monday, you make the student to do on Thursday at 8 a.m. It reminds them to have it done before class on Monday. It's just an optional feature that you get with the checkbox. But this mastery pass, this is the only way that you'll see pages as an option, is if you check that box. So I'm going to click save, and I'm going to come back to my modules, and I'm going to specifically decide, I'm going to say I want to do exam 2. If they make below a certain grade on this, they're going to get the extension activity. So I come here, I click my 3 dots, and I choose mastery paths. And it take a second for it to open up, and it's going to be based on the number of points that I have assigned for that particular piece that we're talking about. So exam 2 is worth 100 points. And so it breaks it down into 3 categories for me automatically. I can then edit from there. But for students who make 70 to 100 points, I'm not going to have them have to do anything. They're just going to go on about their lives. But for anybody who makes below the 70, I'm going to add that I want them to do the extension activity. So I'm going to add this here, and I'm going to click save. And when I come back to modules, I now have exam 2 connected to a mastery path, and students who make below a 70 would get access to this extension activity. So you see that that's a very simplistic way to use mastery paths, just as a demonstration, but really you can make that as complex as you would like. You can do and or rules. They have to do this, if anybody who makes below a 70 has to do this and this or this or that. So you've got control over the specific variables depending on how you want to craft their path through your course.
I have a question, Melissa.
Yes.
So on our end, usually when we have an exam, we use ExamSoft and it's an external thing. So if we wanted to use this, how would we then link it to it? Like, would it be?
So in your assignments, you've got, I'm going to create a new one for an example. I would say, for my example, you don't have to do this, but I would say ExamSoft exam 1. And this would just be very clear that students are taking it in ExamSoft, but it's going to be exam 1. I can put my instructions, I put my points, I assign it to my assignment group based on grades, and make all my selections. But here I'm going to say there's no submission. And that takes away students' ability to upload anything, answer any questions. It's just going to make the column in my grade book, and it's going to make the grade in the student view so they see how well they did. And I'm going to scroll down and say save and publish. So now that I've created that, I'm going to come back to my assignments page. And it's in my participation category just because it's an example, but I would put it in my exam averages or wherever it belongs. And then this particular, I have the same exact options.
Okay.
So it doesn't care where you give the actual test. You can still set it up.
So once we push the grades over to that column, then it will know. Okay. It'd be a good way for us to get them to fill out their SI forms like automatically.
Yeah, there's some definite ways that it can control behaviors. Any other questions? These are all really good.
Yeah, I just found the answer to one of my questions with the pages. Like if you were to click on the pages and you edit, I think you can set an availability date on those things, and then it'll be there. But when students click on it, it'll tell them it's not available till such and such. You weren't able to?
No,
okay.
I've never seen that feature
In pages. I just did one just now, but maybe I'm just wrong. Okay, I'll play around with it again.
Are you talking about adding it to the student to do?
It wasn't under to do, it was under modules, and then I just clicked on a page from something that I had in the past. So it has to be a to do to have a availability.
No,
Okay.
they're not tied to each other in any way.
Okay.
I don't know of how to set a date release on a page. It will in a module. If you have a page within your module and you do the date release to lock until a certain day, your page is automatically included in that.
Okay.
So for sure.
And they won't see it. Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't know what I'm saying here then. Oh, it was a discussion. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, well, I will say that is the end of today's topic. I am happy to stick around for the rest of the time and answer any other questions you have about Canvas, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you guys for being here.